tank and spank. The process of nailing down a single boss while everyone pours the maximum amount of damage into it, and not, as you might expect, masturbating in an aquarium. Oftentimes in an RPG, you'll find yourself up against a single boss with everyone hacking away at their hit points, hoping you finish them off before they finish you off. Repeat this too often, and combats become as boring as when you're not amongst sea creatures. So today we're not going to talk about why I can't go back to Monterey, we're going to talk about designing interesting combats. Topics include encounter length, encounter balance, creative combats, designing against your player's strengths, designing toward your player's strengths, planning, and some ways to keep the players on their toes. But first off, why bother? Sure, making combat interesting is good so your players don't get bored, but those assholes, I don't want to be bored. The more interesting I make combat for myself, the more it incentivizes me to make combats fun for my players. It's so much fun to throw wrenches into the party's plan and watch the players overcome them with fantastic creativity. It's like throwing a baboon into a toddler's cage. You don't know what's gonna happen, but it's gonna be wild. The best combats are puzzles themselves, and I maintain they should be dramatic. How can you link the boss battle to the characters? I mean, sometimes combats can be good old skull stompings, and often they should be, particularly after a run of bad luck, hard combats, or just because you want to kill 1,000 garden gnomes attacking the city. I'll talk about pacing in another video soon, subscribe. But it's up to us to make things feel dramatic and inevitable. So how do we balance all the things that make a good encounter? Well, there's no magic juice, you've just gotta hone your skills through sucking and getting better. Even after decades, I still f it up on a regular basis, so be kind to yourself. Here are some tips and tricks to put you ahead of the curve. Encounter length. My friend Jared once said, Enge, you've gotta keep combats to 4 rounds or less, my dude. Which I originally bristled at, but sure enough, just about every time around round 3, attention and excitement started to wane. If combat isn't already wrapping up, they should feel like they've made considerable progress, killed some foes, or completed some objective. A boss fight can go a little longer, but you want to make sure those indications of progress are there. When you're on the other side of the DM screen, it's hard to figure out how well you're doing without seeing the bad guy's health bar, which you shouldn't do. This ain't that kind of game. As the DM, you can give your players updates. Ever wonder why Matt Mercer says things like, he's looking a little rough? That's an indication that the bad guy is, I'm guessing, under half hit points? Some other phrases I've used in the past to indicate how the PCs are doing. He started to get winded. He's barely holding on. He's got the gout! His nipples are bleeding! He's having the big one, Elizabeth! Write down your favorites and keep them nearby, if for no other reason than so you might accidentally look at the post-it note and remember. Oh yeah, progress reports. I never remember. My players are constantly asking me, is he looking wounded at all? Yes, and he's out of breath, bleeding from a dozen wounds, and looks like a can of smashed assholes. Encounter balance. I'm not one of those guys who thinks that every encounter should be balanced, or fair, or something the PCs could survive. And when the players realize that, suddenly combat can feel a lot more poo-inducing. But I do think we should be able to somewhat predict the fecalosity of our encounters, so we can deploy them with intention. I think we all know by now CR is not helpful. In my first 5e campaign, if I didn't want combat to be trivial, I had to go way past deadly into murderous thrashing, and they'd still walk through like half of them. So how do you make sure your encounters are the Porridge Goldilocks 8? Well, here's an imperfect system my old gaming group introduced me to in Champions 4th Edition. First, throw this bullshit out. Hey dice on a monster? What a load of old crap. That stat block is asking the wrong question. The right question is, how long do you want your combat to last? And how much damage does your party do per round? And that's the number of hit points your baddie should have. This gets more complicated in anything more than a tank and spank, but I can't do everything for you, as much as I'd love to. Let's say they're doing about 25 points per attack. There are 4 of them, 2 have multi-attack, that's 150 hit points per turn times 4 turn, that's 600 hit points. Now, if someone crits, it'll shorten that and they'll feel like the crit mattered. If they miss, combat will last longer. The flow is influenced by the results, and they'll start to feel that over time. So if I want a fire elemental that will challenge my players and they're throwing out 150 hit points per round, the monster manual says I can only give it a max of 156 hit points. Well, that's a simple rounding error in the world of PC damage. Now, I want it to last at least 3 rounds, so it's gonna have 450 hit points. Probably 475. And if I made an oopsie and they're not killing it fast enough, or they're killing it too fast, I can adjust the hit points on the fly. If they're really kicking ass, I don't like to take that away from them. It can die faster. That's fine. That's what I made it for. I don't make monsters to survive. I make them for drama. Oh, and be very careful about raising armor class. Missing sucks. I once raised the AC of a mimic. Well, it was a mimic room. The entire room was a mimic. and I raised its AC from 12 to 14. I mean, 14 is a nothing AC. How much more could they possibly miss? I've honestly never seen a group consistently roll so many 13s in my life. I'm still not sure a barbarian player won't kill me over this. I'm sorry, Jack. Damage output. How much damage can your PCs take before they flop to the ground like an oversized bag of noodles? Most of the time, I leave monster damage alone. I might bump it up to another die type or add another die to their damage roll, but as long as the bad guys are doing some damage, it should be okay. But when you want to make a statement, if the PCs have around 100 hit points and they're up against a heavy hitter, maybe that bad guy does like 25 damage per hit with multi-attack. So they'd better figure some shit out fast or that hero's gonna go splat. They'll need to figure out how to up the tank's AC or how to kite the creature, or they're gonna have to figure out how to stick a humanoid back together with chewing gum and baling wire. However you want to justify getting that bad guy's damage up to a point that creates good drama, do it. And all of that is great, but, and this is a big but, making your players pivot on the spot and adjust to a constantly changing landscape is much more satisfying for everybody than pinata-ing a big sack of hit points. So here are some ways you can switch it up. Adds. Give your BBEG a bunch of low-level monsters. They can all be one-shotters. Hell, use MCDM's minions rules. They're epic. These guys have 1 hit point, so your PCs can dispatch them in one shot, but what they cannot do is ignore them. They hit just as hard as a regular enemy, so the heroes have to dedicate someone to taking down the adds so they don't tear the wizard into wizard jerky. Fighting a necromancer? Have them summon a bunch of skeletons. Taking on a dragon? Bring out the kobolds. Fighting a mimic? How about more mimics? Did I mention the mimic room? Oh, and you can bring your minions on in waves. Have them appear in different turns so that they can't just blow them all up at once. And have them show up in different areas so the PCs have to do the minion mash, dancing all around the battlefield to avoid the newest wave of Goombas. Different types of enemies. Sometimes the best big boss is a collection of big bosses, like they run across an evil adventuring party. Once again, my musketeer group was out in the world doing their thing and they ran into a rogue, wizard, barbarian, bard, and a musket master, available on Patreon. It was one of the hardest battles they ever fought, especially since the leader of their group was one of the PC's exes he was still in love with. But it's alright, they're married now and she's about to poop out a baby. I'm pretty sure that's how babies work, right? Ugh, babies are so gross. The environment. One great way to spice up a battle is to make the environment a factor. You can add lava flows, a frozen lake, a room that's nothing but swinging cages. It's awesome. The first time your PCs shove the bad guy into the lava, they're gonna remember it. But also, vice versa. If they get shoved into the lava themselves, they're not gonna forget that anytime soon, because you don't just forget 19d10 damage. Or 9 if you're not completely submerged. This is still a lot of damage. That is a hairy battle. Well, unless you got pushed into the lava and your hair all got burned off. Ooh, new product. Tired of shaving your body hair? Try lava. It'll get rid of unwanted body hair real fast. And permanently. Most likely because you'll be dead. Vertical space. I run a real swashbuckling campaign and realized recently that swashbuckling basically means jumping. Or swinging. But that's just fancy jumping. So I've been adding vertical space to my encounters as much as possible, which is hard to do on a VTT, but you can make it work. Check out this map. The top layer is colored normally, but everything on the lower level is blue. If you can do it in person with actual physical terrain, it's way better, but this'll work. I call this map the pump house, because it's where they make pumps. That's not true, they just pump water into the canals. You can knock the mooks off of the stairs and into the water below, or into the gears if you're higher up. You can ride the chains up or down. It's a blast. And it's free for members of our Patreon. There's an adventure that goes with it that I'll be adding when I get time to write it. Sign up! The chaos element. You and the BBEG's forces are slugging it out, fireballs smashing into cliffs, when a purple worm, tired of both of your bullshit, bursts out of the ground and tries to eat everyone. Hey! I'm trying to watch Worm Island here! Other examples of chaos elements are the room catches fire. The dungeon is mid-cave-in. The PCs are in a competition with the bad guys and the cops are trying to stop them both. The room is filling with water, or acid. They have to convince someone to side with them, so you've got a social encounter during a combat encounter. A fight on top of speeding carriages, which incidentally I wrote rules for, and I'm currently running a game on Happy Jacks called Aldgate Adventures where you can hear us play through it. There's so much yeeting. Designing against your player's strengths. Deploy this strategy with caution, because it really sucks when your character is completely ineffective. But when it's time to really make the PCs sweat, you've got to figure out how to shut down their normal mode of operations and try new strategies. A character who does tons of damage, surround them with lots of low health enemies. No matter how much damage they do, they can only still kill one at a time. Have a big time caster? Make a puzzle of anti-magic zones, or have a more powerful caster that they have to overcome. And once they take him down, that caster can just blow loads. That's what happens when I improv. Is your barbarian used to running in, taking it hard all night, and coming out on top? Put them up against bad guys with mental powers. Ain't no rage protection versus mind blast, motherfucker. I learned that the hard way when the mind flayers hurt my Karlach. You stay away from my girlfriend, you Zoidberg-ass son of a bitch! Designing toward your player's strengths. More often than not, I set up an encounter made for my players to use their cool stuff and absolutely crush. I'll tweak maps, add terrain features, and put in monster types that allow my players to feel super cool. Have a sniper? Put a lookout in a guard tower and let your player drop them silently. Have a druid who can cast control water? Put a battle over a river. Have a fire mage? Let them absolutely destroy a den of trolls. Have a fighter who can cleave? Give them a sea of minions to absolutely destroy. I once put a fire-breathing proto-drake in an orc camp so the players could try to release it as a chaos element. The arcane trickster rogue turned invisible, snuck past the orcs into the cave where she discovered a series of locks holding the drake in place. She picked each lock one at a time, releasing the beast on the camp, and that is when the players attacked. It was tense, it was clever, and it made the rogue player feel like the badass rogue she dreamed of. That was our first adventure together, and we're still talking about it years later. Reward the player's choices. They took these abilities for a reason. If you constantly stop them from using their cool shit, you're kind of an asshole. You can make things a challenge, but still let them use their cool abilities. It's democracy in action. Let them plan. Your players won't remember the 1,000 pop quiz combats they ran into trekking through your world, but they will absolutely remember the time they made a plan, executed it flawlessly, and absolutely smashed the king of the Thunder Giants. Thunder Giants? That sounds rad. Patron. For a significant combat, give them a little time to formulate a plan. It's fun and it's something their characters would be good at. I often like to end a session by revealing the monster and the map, and then I encourage the players to make a text thread or whatever to chat over their strategy. I tried this out on my old Stream of Justice group. Yes, that's a urination joke. Yes, it was mine. I'm not proud of it, kind of proud of it. They were pretty high level and ended up in the mountains in a dragon's lair when the dragon flew in with 3 of her offspring. Could they make it out of this? I have no idea, but that ain't my job. When we reconvened the next week, it was obvious they'd come up with a plan, and a damn good one. Everyone buffed the crap out of the paladin. Haste, enlarge, bless, and with his fistful of buffs, he ran at the dragons. Hit, crit, smite, motherfucker! And with that, one of the dragons went down. I was absolutely floored. Holy shit, I didn't even know that was possible. Only Mama and 2 boys left when he yells, "Action surge!" Did I mention he had a few levels in Fighter? Oh yeah, baby. Zoom! He runs over to the next dragon and smashes its head into something that resembles a wet prune. Never. Nope, your math isn't wrong. He killed 2 young dragons in 1 turn. And something I thought was going to be a hard, dramatic fight, they completely turned on its head. But Enge, you say, for that is my name. Isn't that metagaming? Yeah, but that's good metagaming. We'll get to the difference between good and bad metagaming in a future video. Subscribe. Ways to keep them on their toes. Have a wizard who always sticks in the back, have a patrol come along and flank him. Have a goal like release the shackled beast or steal the ancient tome of Indala. Have a lot of long range, stick them in a small room. Have a lot of melee, make them cover ground. A rogue can get there fast, but they're gonna have a hard time if they've overextended themselves and all the bad guys can pound on them with nobody else around. Have them solve a puzzle while under fire. Banish someone. It takes them out for a round or 2, but they'll be back when that caster fails a concentration roll, most likely by dying. PCs don't like it when you banish their friends. Hit the party with chilled touch. When there's no healing in a fight, you can actually hear their sphincters tightening. Have a barbarian or a fighter who dominates every combat? Time to do some domination of your own. Turn these characters on their own party and watch everyone freak out. And don't forget about lair actions and MCDM's villainous actions. I even give these to low-level bad guys who really want to make an impression. Dress to be the villain you want to be. And it'll help if you make the goal something other than murder, like free the prisoners, or open the castle gate, close the castle gate, smash the artifact, steal the artifact, put the artifact up your nose. Woo! Game tools. If your players are well versed on the monster manual, try picking up a book like Kobold Press's Tome of Beasts. It's got a bunch of stuff that they've never heard of before, unless they're my friend Brian, who is in my group and also helped write this book. Support him! I'm sure you've heard of this book. It takes a very different approach to 5e monsters, giving them reactions, bonus actions, and special abilities. And it makes combat way more dynamic and memorable. And it's got like the best name for any book I've ever seen. Free mortals! At its best, combat is a complex puzzle requiring players to use their spells and abilities in creative and exciting ways that get the entire table cheering, laughing, or gasping. Solving it should be an exciting challenge, and though we may not always succeed in making it fun, we are only human after all. Except for you, Kevin. He came from the Gray Planet. Hopefully, these tools gave you a little something in your junk drawer, so even when you end up in a surprise combat, you can make it fun for your players. That's all for now. I'm gonna do one video a month where I address your comments, question, and trollful comments, so write something down there in the comments. Or ain't you got the guts? And thanks to all my new subscribers. Welcome to this thing I decided to do in a panic, desperate to make rent. Don't forget to share with your friends if you enjoy this. The more subscribers I get, the sooner I can start turning down work to do this full-time. This is like 5 full-time jobs. Head over to our Patreon for exclusive content, adventures, characters, etc. And good traveler, until we meet again, check this out. This week I'm featuring my friends over at Pocket Dragon Pub. They do a ton of great actual plays and systems other than D&D. If you're interested in checking out something a little bit different with some great players, head on over to their YouTube channel or find them on Twitch.
Let's just go. I'm done. Does anyone else? Are you guys finished with your sausages?